Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Perfect. Fabulous. So it looks like we're all here. As people are filtering in, I will let them come in, but we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ayana Newborn. I am the program administrator of BCLA Yoga Studies. And today from 4 to 6, we will be presenting what BCLA Yoga Studies is all about. Just a quick reminder, I have it up here posted. There are student resource sessions after our session. The financial aid group will be meeting from 6 to 6:30. Career and professional development meeting 6:30 to 7. And for international students, please stay for the 7 to 7:30 panel of student conversations. Okay, fabulous. I will stop sharing now. I first want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to our alum who have come back to speak with us today and our current students who are going to be sharing their experience. I asked them a couple of questions to kind of guide our discussion today. And so before we get into the meat and potatoes of what BCLA Yoga Studies is, I would love for them to share their experience. So Katie, if you wouldn't mind starting us off, please tell us a little bit about yourself, and what brought you to the program, where you are now, et cetera, et cetera.
Hi there, my name is Katie. I'm so excited to be here. Um, Getting my master's in yoga studies was such a great experience. So I'm really honored to be able to talk to you about it today. I think, as a yoga practitioner, and I think this is a very common experience that yoga practitioners have. I started my 200-hour training with no real desire to be a yoga teacher. But of course, after graduating, I was like, I just want to keep learning. I'm so thirsty for more knowledge. So I got my 300-hour. I traveled around the world getting my 300-hour. And when that was all over, it culminated with an amazing experience in India. I was still like, well, what now? I want to keep learning. And so I stumbled across graduate yoga studies just by Googling. I was actually looking for a master's program. And um, I'll just say that I really felt like my bachelor's, my college career wasn't really my own. At that time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was very much pursuing, what my parents thought was a safe path, a good job. I was studying journalism. So I had this whole other career path I was on when I found yoga. I was a journalist out in New York City. That's kind of where I found yoga. And so when I learned you could get your master's in yoga studies, I was so excited and I eagerly applied. And the pandemic happened. I'm kind of forgetting and blurring my timeline a little. I think I applied right as the pandemic was happening. And so when I got accepted, in 2020, I was a little like, oh my gosh, I can't get my master's. This is wild. But then I was like, well, what else am I gonna do? I'm stuck at home. I'd love to continue learning. So it actually was a very easy yes. My first year in the program was virtual because of the circumstances. And then I was like, I want to be in person. Like I can't do this anymore. I want to be on campus. And I'm so glad I made that leap. I also, some of my unique experiences to my time in the program was I was a graduate assistant, which helped me fund the program. And it was really special because I was the marketing assistant, so I got to help with social media, newsletters, and things like that, some event planning of our annual yoga day. And for me, I'm so glad I applied for that because there was just so many things I got to see, and I felt like I was really, in the program. Like really, seeing all the ins and outs and workings of it. And where I am today is I'm actually the administrative coordinator of the program. So once I graduated, I didn't want to leave. I was actually quite sad and so happy I get to work for the department now. And I'll just share a couple other unique experiences that I just love to highlight is I got the opportunity to teach undergraduates yoga through the program at LMU, and that was such a special experience for me. Again, college wasn't really I don't want to say it wasn't my thing. When I first went away to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And it's just so interesting to me that higher education and education in general is such a core value of mine now. And so being able to teach students who were where I was then, just in college, not really sure what I wanted to do, was so special. And being able to teach them tools for resiliency, and just, they would share that they were experiencing anxiety or overwhelm. And so offering them tools was so special. And my time at the program also connected me with our local YMCA, and now I also manage a team of yoga teachers. We go into the schools in the LA Unified School District and bring yoga to K through 8th grade students, and that's so special. It's a grant-funded program, and so grateful for those opportunities, and I really do have LMU to thank. And then I just want to make sure I'm covering all the questions we talked about. I'd say I chose, there are different kind of focuses you can have, and I did the yoga, mindfulness, and social change certificate. And I think one of the most important things I learned about yoga is its malleability, meaning, it kind of takes different form based on the context it's practiced in, whether that's in the East, in India, whether that's here in the West, whether that's in our capitalist society. It can look so many different ways, and just to be really aware and mindful of that. There's so many different, yoga means so many different things, but then also the context it's practiced in is so crucial, and it's important to be mindful of those things when we go into spaces to teach. So I think about this a lot. I talk to my team of youth yoga teachers about that a lot. What are you may think you're going in with one intention, but you have to understand the context you're practicing in. And so yeah, those conversations were so rich, and so I'm just so grateful for the experiences I've had. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Katie. I appreciate that. And it's such a blessing to have you back here with us supporting our team. I can say that for myself, like, similar to Katie, being in the program, it's like, oh, I love LMU so much. Okay, let's work for the university. Thank you for that. The next person I would love to share is Alba. Alba, please unmute. Tell us about yourself, what cohort you were in, what brought you to LMU, and what you are doing now.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. Can you hear me properly? Yeah, okay. I'm from Spain, so I have this different accent, but I'll speak loud. So yeah, you send me these questions, so I'm going to try to address them. I think that would be better, and then maybe we can leave some time and we can answer your own questions. That might be more useful. So yeah, the first one says, well, I was in the 2016-2018 cohort, so it's been a few years already. Time goes very fast, but I remember everything very well. And the first, what I'm doing, okay, let me start by these two. Like what I'm doing here, now I'm in my 3rd year of PhD at the University of California in Riverside. So I'm like an hour and a half from LA. I wanted to stay close to LMU, so it was one of the reasons why I picked UCR. And yeah, in the PhD right now, this year I'm passing my exams. Well, hopefully I'm doing my exams, and I'm a teaching assistant already, so I have 75 students every quarter, which is a lot, and I teach courses like next quarter, I'm teaching a course called Religion and Science, for example. Right now, I'm teaching a course which is called Religious Myths and Rituals, and it's about the different religions in the United States. But in the future, I plan more to do my own courses, more related to yoga philosophy and kind of my own focus. And then on my own research, I'm focusing more on Jain yoga, actually. And it was because of the program and because of what I learned through LMU and through Dr. Chappell, especially after our trip to India, that kind of sparkled this interest on me. And then now I'm focusing mostly on Jain yoga texts. Actually, I'm translating some of the texts from Sanskrit, collaborating still with Chris after so many years. And so this is kind of what I'm doing now. But going back to the question, so your first question was what led me to the program, to the LMU program. So let's go back a little bit on history. And my background is actually in psychology. So like I have part of my family is more kind of in the medical field. I always thought I might be a doctor, but then I was more interested on the emotional and psychological aspects of health. So finally, I went for psychology. I did my undergrad. I got my license too as a counselor. I like it a lot. And during those years, I started to go deeper into yoga, also as a practitioner. So yeah, I started to go to these yoga classes, and they allowed me to kind of keep my mind stable to do really good in studies, but also physically kind of keep my body also healthy. And I like it a lot. And I for a long time also I study like Indian culture and Indian history through novels, through whatever I could read about India. I don't know even why I did it. Since I was very young, I would do it at home and I would explore by myself. So yeah, when it was the moment after I finished my undergrad in psychology and I got the license, the next step was like, okay, do I start my own practice here, uh, or do I take another kind of route? So I had to explore a little bit, and I really wanted to know more about yoga. I did my first yoga teaching training in a yoga school back in Spain. This yoga school, I think, is really great. It's community based. They have like different styles of yoga, and I like it a lot. But I was missing more. I'm also kind of an academic, so I was missing more. I wanted to know more about the text and the philosophies and why this was happening and this religion and this other religion. And when I finished the yoga teaching training, I wanted to know more. So I started doing my research and I read some of Dr. Chappell's books, but I was in Spain, so I had to make my way to the States. And I started looking for how to deal with the financial aspect. So I applied for different scholarships, and finally I got a Fulbright that was very helpful. So through Fulbright, I came to finally to LMU, and yeah, I did a master program. It lasted 2 years, and this brings me to the second question that Yana told me to address, which is describing my unique experience in the program. It's hard to put in a short conversation 2 years, but I do think I enjoy it a lot because I really wanted to learn about all these things. And we had these courses that it was what I was looking for. I wanted to learn, I wanted to read also primary sources. And in the seminars and with the expertise of Dr. Chappell, we read directly the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. We read them all like one by one, like splitting up the Sanskrit. Then I had read the Bhagavad Gita before in my own language, but I understand so little. So we could read the Bhagavad Gita. We had a whole course about it. Then I could read it in Sanskrit too, slowly, and go back to it again. We had another course on Hatha Yoga that we went through all the major Hatha Yoga texts and how they build up from tantric practices. Even we read some of the Vedic hymns, like translated into English, but I was exposed to all these primary sources that I felt so unprepared, I have to say. But with the guidance of Chris and with the guidance of the other professors, the group is very small. So even if it's, I wouldn't say it's easy, I'm gonna be honest, but I would sit down and I deep into the text and I will ask the professors again and again. And it was amazing. And I have to say, I do feel very grateful because even now in the master, in the PhD, I don't get to do that. And like in the PhDs are slightly different wherever university you do it, and they depend a lot on the professor's expertise. So I had only one seminar so far, I think, only one seminar that I could read like primary sources, for example. I only one Buddhist seminar that we read some Tibetan. It was some Tibetan still they were translations. So even the research that I'm doing now, I don't know how I would be doing it without my training in the master's program. So I do think like if some of you like let's wait for your questions at the end. But if some of you do want to go on academia later on, yeah, if you use the time in the program, like you will get this kind of background in yoga from different religious traditions. And for sure, I can say like later on, you can use that for your later PhD or whatever. Because right now, even as I'm saying, I cannot read those texts here. There's no expertise on those kind of areas. Um, your unique experience, yes. Then when we studied Jainism in India. That was particularly kind of special because of course it's in India. It's you get to live there with the Jains, and there are some challenges, of course, India in the summer, but it gives you another glimpse, like probably more direct glimpse. I remember myself in the Jain library reading all these Jain texts as much as I could, and I spent as much as time as I could with the monks and the nuns. So yeah, it was very unique in that sense. And then what else? I think I'm third question. The most memorable or valuable lesson learned about yoga and myself. So this there much to say here, but I would say that first of all, I discovered that yoga is just so much. It's very broad. It's really very broad, and even historically, but also in contemporary times, we also know that now yoga keeps on expanding, keeps on taking different forms. So I think this was one of the main insights. Like I was like, wow, I was so under. I knew this little tiny drop, and yoga it has a long history from very very old until the modern times. It's in many religious traditions. It has spread all over the world. It keeps on changing. So that was one of the big lessons. This is so much kind of expanding my understanding of yoga. And um, then in my own practice during the program, I would say I was more into meditation. I went to a lot of retreats because I was exploring a lot vipassana meditation, the Buddhist meditation. And that also, because some of the things that you will be learning are also experiential. So with the experience that I was having in some of the retreats, in some of the classes, somehow I was also making sense of what I was reading with my professors. So that was kind of very interesting as well. And then for my thesis, I actually did a study in which I compared this Buddhist Vipassana with Patanjali Yoga. And yeah, with some reflections, kind of do doing both, exploring a little bit of my experience, but with everything that I had learned through the master's program. So yeah, you can feel free to explore that. I think the program is open for that. Yeah. And then the last question, if more about the challenges, if I want to be honest, I would say that in my case, because I'm an international student, I had never lived in the US before. I lived in the UK before, but not in the US. So there are a lot of things that are different, cultural differences, and sometimes the days of things of daily life. My first year, I didn't have a car in LA. So I think my struggles didn't have to do much with the program per se. The program kind of kept me going because I like it so much. I wanted to go to class and I wanted to study more, and I was always asking this and that. There were other challenges that are part of the human. We have a lot of things to deal, even from where to find a room. Sometimes they were basic things that were not completely directed to the program, right? But that, if you have more questions, you can ask later on. And the last question, yeah, I was told, is how the master prepared me for the PhD. So actually, when I finished the master, Dr. Chappell did tell me, like, kind of encouraged me, like, why don't you do the PhD? Like, he was kind of, but I was not sure, I have to be honest, like, because I had this background in counseling. I was thinking maybe I want to do something outside of the university. I was not sure. Also, I had some, because of my visa, Fulbright visa, I had some requirement that I had to go 2 years to Spain, back to Spain. So I kind of decided, okay, it's fine. I'll go back. I went back to Spain, and for 2 years, I did work I taught yoga for 2.5 years in different places. Then I work in a hospital with children and families with cancer. The kids have cancer, and with their families, and different kind of jobs more related to counseling, and also teaching yoga at the same time. But then after the pandemic hit in, and it was kind of a moment in which I had to stop, and I had to decide, do I want to keep doing this, or I go back and get my PhD and do my path in academia. So I decided to do that, and I don't regret it, because I like more, to be honest, I like more teaching and being with the students, and I like it much more. So it was part of an exploration, I would say, too. And I do think the master prepared me a lot for the PhD. Like, I'm building up my work from the what I did in the masters. And even my colleagues, I can see some of them, they are doing kind of the same. The ones who have a master, they kind of use it for the PhD. So yes, I feel very grateful to, like, the all the help and support I received from LMU. It goes beyond the masters, because even later on, when I had to apply for PhD and all, like, all my professors were very helpful. They wrote the letters of recommendation, and yeah, I'm still in touch with them. I hopefully someday, I keep on telling some of them we'll write something together. I presented the first time in a conference, sharing a table with Dr. Chris. That was such an honor. So yeah, the support I got, it was really amazing, and I that's why I will try to give my best to. Here, now I'm in a public school. It's slightly different. Like, some of my professors right now, they are not so easily accessible sometimes. Doing the master program, if you have a smaller group, you can take kind of advantage of that, in the good sense of, if you have a smaller group, they might be able to guide you, like, maybe closer sometimes. Like, now I have 75 students. Sometimes I cannot learn all their names. So it's slightly different. But yeah, that was a lot. I sorry if it was a little bit too long, but yeah, it also,
Oh, thank you.
if you have, I think we can, if you have some questions, like, what might be more useful for the people who might be thinking about applying to the program. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Alba, for sharing. I appreciate that. Yes, our program being small means it is definitely more of a family unit, and we can support each other in that, whether it be peer to peer, whether it be professor to student or mentor to student within our program, outside of our program. LMU is definitely about supporting their students as they move forward in the world. I agree with Alba. Yes, we will have your questions. So please, 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 as you're listening to everyone, jot down some of the questions that you may have. I would love for our current students to share about their experience, and then we'll open up the floor for questions for our alum and for our current students. Okay. Alana, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Alana and I'm in cohort 11 with Gabby here in our first year. And my background's I got a degree in nutrition, but more out of a place of looking to just finish an undergraduate degree. And I finished during the pandemic, so I never felt very cohesive with my university. And it was just kind of a good experience, but not a deeply formative experience for me. So through my undergrad and after, I was managing some yoga studios. I had done my 200-hour and some post 200-hour trainings, and was just looking to learn yoga a little more deeply. So before applying to LMU, I was looking at doing like a 300-hour or 500-hour. I was looking at a bunch of different schools with Ayurveda or different like yoga related programs. And one thing that drew me to LMU is, well, when I found the website, I realized my grandma had told me about it like 5, 6 years ago that LMU had a yoga studies program. And I was just kind of like, whatever, grandma, that's cool. So when I saw the website, I just like put my name in and whatever. And Ayana reached out to me within like a day. And I really liked the more personal process of applying. And I just felt really well cared for from the beginning. Yeah, thanks, Grandma. And then I met with Dr. Chappell. And again, it was just very much from the beginning, I knew that they cared about what they were doing and cared about how the students were doing. And the other thing I really loved was it is a really well-rounded program. So a lot of other programs I was looking at were so focused in one area that I felt like I couldn't get a well-rounded yoga education. So I love that we have not only philosophy, but you have to take Sanskrit, which I think is the most authentic way to learn yoga, is to learn the source language of yoga. And I also think that learning Sanskrit's important in making sure that we don't whitewash the practice, and it helps us to not insert our own beliefs so easily when you learn that source text. The other thing I liked is that there's still a health component, so you can take the yoga therapy route and you can work in health. I started out that way, and then I was kind of burnt out with health and realized that I really love the Sanskrit and philosophy. So I was able to seamlessly change my path because it is something that you can really make your own. So I applied, got in, first semester was awesome. And then Ayana reached out to me, and there was part of my background is I've also worked in nonprofits and done some grant writing and worked in nonprofits for several years. So there was an opportunity with Homeboy Industries out here in LA, and they work with gang rehab, prison rehab, and then I'm working for their middle and high school now. So all pregnant teens and parenting teens, teens who have just gotten out of gangs, some teens are still in the LA gangs, and then teens who are going in and out of prison. And it is such a new space to bring yoga into, but it is a beautiful space to bring yoga into. So I moved back out to LA. I'm originally from here. And with that job, I started this semester. And it's been a wonderful experience learning how to incorporate everything I'm learning in really real life circumstances. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from this job and this internship is that you can really bring yoga anywhere, and it's completely what you want it to be or make it to be. So really anyone that is breathing can benefit from yoga. And it is such a major tool for our mental health, physical health, spiritual health. And it's so beautiful to be able to bring it really anywhere with you. And I just feel like the program, before Homeboy Industries, I had a semester where I was just teaching yoga, and every class I taught, I brought something new into the class, whether it was a new way to play with a pose, a new breathwork technique, or some philosophy to share, or a mantra to work into my class. So it's really like applicable and practical from day one. And I feel like it's such a beautiful program. I need to stick to my notes though. Hold on, let me make sure I said everything. And Yeah, so at Homeboy, I'm teaching yoga, but also like bringing yoga into health labs. So I teach sex ed from a yogic view, nutrition from a yoga point of view, and mental health addiction labs. We do substance abuse circles, and it's cool to not only be challenged to bring the yoga philosophy into all of these different spaces, but also to see how easy it is to bring yoga philosophy into all of these different spaces. Um, so obviously I've learned a ton. I think one of the biggest things I've learned about myself, because I was really intimidated going into the program because I hadn't really studied the Bhagavad Gita before or really any yogic texts. And I felt like a lot of my classmates were really well versed in that philosophy. But it was cool to see that out of all of us in the spectrum of our experiences, we're all learning in the class and pulling something new out of the classes. And it just creates a space for everyone to show up authentically with whatever experiences they have. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned is you're smarter than you think you are, and you can do really hard things. Like this program is hard, but with the support, it feels really empowering to do these hard things. And then I think the main thing is that this program can be exactly what you make it to be. They have all of these experiences and classes and deep, insane coursework, and the teachers do a great job at offering it to you. But if you don't show up and bring yourself and show up authentically, you really just get what you put into the program. So I encourage you, if you're applying, to show up, even if you're nervous, just keep showing up, be a participant in classes, and don't underestimate your own personal power. You could totally do this if you want to and make it whatever you want.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so glad you're enjoying your time at Homeboys. That's a new partnership that Dr. Chappell and our team have been cultivating and building. And so we're really happy and excited to see you thrive. Okay, Gabby, please take it away.
Gosh, that was like such a mic drop, Alana. It's so fabulous. Like you hit it all.
We
So
love yoga studies.
yeah, and I'm so happy you moved here. I'm in the same cohort with Alana, and I just remember meeting you and really feeling like such a kindred spirit connection. And Ayana and I both being like, yes, you will move here and it will all work. And then it happened. Anyway, so my name is Gabby. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in cohort 11 with Alana, just started this year. And I'm doing the yoga therapy certification track, which is the, partner to the yoga philosophy track, which goes a little more deeply into the health sciences and more kind of different kind of practicum work. But to go to the first question of what led me to the program, I was raised very, very Catholic, but California Catholic, which means like Birkenstocks and Grateful Dead and, all that very kind of granola view of spirituality. But I was really raised around priests and Jesuits and nuns because my mother got her higher education degrees in theology and catechism. And so that was just kind of the fabric of my life. And she was also a yoga practitioner. And my mom is my hero. She's on my altar. She's the goddess to me. I really look up to her. And so I was just inspired by her. And I practiced alongside her. She kind of invited me in. But I was really focused on the arts. I early on was like, I'm going to be an actor. This is what I love to do. I'm creative. I'm loud on stage. I'm going to do this. It feels really good. And it did feel really good for most of my youth. And then I ended up pursuing it in college. And I got a dual degree in philosophy and theater. Philosophy kind of came later because I was really unsatisfied with the theater practice. And what I kind of discovered was what I really loved about theater and acting was really kind of abstract movement work or movement theater that is very close to yoga practice in some ways. It was the only other place I was moving my body the same way I was moving in yoga. And I just felt something inside of me was stirred by that, maybe. And so I took some intro philosophy classes because I was curious. And I fell in love with it because I had a wonderful Buddhist philosophy professor in undergrad. I was at a Jesuit university. I'm like a cheerleader for the Jesuits. I really appreciate the Jesuit education of bringing in spirituality, but also educating the whole person, having a service kind of mind, a community orientation, and also that appreciation for academics and knowledge. I really appreciate that, with a caveat, they're not a perfect group of folks. But I did receive this incredible education. And then I was in Seattle and I was like, you know what, if I'm going to be an actor, I'm going to go to LA and I'm going to do it. And then I did it for many years and I was very miserable. I was really sad. I was getting worse at acting. I was like wilting, and it didn't matter if I got cast or I didn't get cast. I was just so deeply unsatisfied. But the one thing that kept me going was my yoga practice, which I got very disciplined in when I was in rehabilitation from a pretty disruptive eating disorder. So that was kind of the setting that caused me to go deeper into my yoga. And my mom, this yoga woman, she had her own yoga studio. She's like, LMU, I mean, these sagely women in our lives, LMU has this program. I'm like, yeah, I'm an actor though. I'm an actor, whatever that means. And pandemic happens, and how did that happen without completely reevaluating your life? And so I said, you know what, that's been bookmarked on my computer for ages. Let me think about that. I reached out to Ayana. We had a wonderful meeting. I went to a retreat in Benedict Canyon. I cried in my car after because I had felt, finally, I had found some community. I had felt really lonely in LA. I was really interested in these practices, but I had been harmed in fitness studios because I had this history of an eating disorder and I didn't want to be in that environment, but I needed to find yoga community. And so that propelled me towards the degree. I really wanted to, so that kind of leads into the next question of my experience and what I think you get from the program, which is I really wanted to learn from authority figures, people who know their stuff. I didn't want to go to some random studio and trust that a person in a good vibes only t-shirt is going to really satisfy this really strong urge in me to learn and to get deeper into it. So I had watched some of Dr. Chappell's lectures on glow.com, which I do yoga classes on because I'm really about home practice. And so I just wanted to be guided by people I knew I could trust. And that is exactly who these people are. I trust Ayana, I trust Dr. Chappell, I trust Katie, I trust all my professors so much to guide me on a path, but also they trust me as well to be kind of intelligent and thoughtful in the path I'm taking. And I also really needed positive discipline. I just, I needed some people asking things from me, and I kind of needed that to learn because I was kind of wavering. And so I think discipline can be really a positive aspect of your life, and it's something that you should cultivate, and yoga requires you to cultivate. So program helped me cultivate that, which has just been really impactful. Looking at my notes, yes, I really feel like I've connected to a new community, people like Alana, who I'm, able to talk about these things that I don't really have many people in my life I can talk to about. And so I really want to pursue going into rehabilitation centers and providing yoga therapy there. So that's why I'm on this yoga therapy track. But in foundations, Dr. Chappell and I got talking. We had some synchronicities. We, had a good relationship. And, he asked me if I would be his research assistant for this year. So now I am working in the department with Ayana and Katie and Dr. Chappell. And it's been, just another incredible layer on my education because I'm reading what Dr. Chappell is producing about what he's also teaching in class. And it's just, my life is so fused with yoga now. And it's what I've been dreaming of for many years. When I was little, I used to tell my mom I wanted to be a nun. And I feel like this is the closest I've kind of gotten to that experience of just being submerged in the wisdom of these practices and of these traditions. I do teach. I have been teaching. I'm a registered yoga teacher. I'm wearing my LMU t-shirt today because incredible Ayana set me up with an opportunity to teach at USC this morning, which I did. And that was so fun. And just, I love getting to disrupt spaces with yoga and, you know, be this like radical interruption for whatever functioning moment they're in their day. And it's funny, they come into class, they're like really armored, and then you get provide yoga, and suddenly people are like a little more starry-eyed. And it was really lovely to see that and to have that opportunity be provided to me by this program, which is something that I also needed. I didn't know where to find jobs. I love to do this. I want to teach. Where do I find the jobs? And through Ayana, through these people, you find those connections, and thank God for that, because it's a grind to be a yoga teacher in the same way, you know, not the same way, but kind of the same that it was to be an actor. You have to really like be on the eye for opportunity. Yes,
Thank
I think
you.
that's all.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel so blessed and so touched. We are very grateful for you being a part of our staff this year. You have definitely elevated the support of what we do and our execution of just from what Dr. Chappell does to what we do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just want to be mindful of time. We want to open it up to all of you who are here. If you have any questions for our alum about their experience, if you want to know more, please unmute yourself, raise your hand, whichever feels comfortable to you, and ask away. Yes, we have our first question. Nadia?
Hi, yes. My name is Nadia. Can you all hear me good? I also have a little thick accent, so I hope you guys understand me. I did write a couple of questions down that actually, first of all, I really want to thank you all so much for like going so deeply in the detail and explaining about this program and sharing your stories and your history and how you got there and what all the like past history experiences that led you here. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I would assume that my first question would probably be, is the program looking more, I mean, how does the program look like in a way? When are like the classes held, and are they more orientated toward like theory of yoga, or do we actually do like physical yoga? So yeah, that would probably be my first question. I do have a couple of more after if we have time, but that is something I'm very interested in.
Okay, I'll jump in and introduce myself. I'm Chris Chappell. I'm the Doshi Professor of Indica Comparative Theology and the founding director of the Master of Arts. And we are bimodal. And what happens is, just as this is being recorded, from day one in 2013, every classroom experience is recorded and uplifted into the Brightspace learning platform. For instance, last night I had, I think, 6 people in the classroom and 5 people on the screen. And we were so thrilled because one of our European students presented. She lives in Germany. And it was seamless. And we were so happy to be with her again because it's completely wonky in terms of the time difference. She often will simply review the video, but the classes meet Monday and Wednesday from 3 to 7. And usually there'll be a 3 to 4:15 class. That's Sanskrit 1, Sanskrit 2. Then there will be alternatively a health class or a philosophy class. And in terms of the mix, the gateway course is called Foundations of Yoga Studies. And I'd love for Alana and Gabby to check in on it and say thumbs up or thumbs down. But the way that we structured it this year and every year, it's a little bit different. But every morning we met at 9 a.m. for 2 weeks. and we did asana with me. And I've been doing asana for more than 50 years, and it's just, I think, so critically important. And then we would have conversations, we did field trips. So that class I know has an integrated physical practice with a health science class, with a hatha yoga class. I believe our professors, Dr. Slatov and Dr.
Fazio.
Dr. Slatov and Dr. Fazio integrate some practice. It's not like you're going to a yoga studio per se. And then our India experience now has shifted. And rather than doing summer heat in the study of Jainism every year, every other year we go to two premier yoga therapy training facilities, one in Pondicherry and the other in Loyola. And that certainly involves a degree of practice. So maybe Gabby, you could speak to these questions.
Yeah, we definitely do physical practice. Like we would do labs in health sciences. And so, for instance, like we did a lab on the musculoskeletal differences. So, learning about the different ways people's skeleton might be put together. And we did that with physical practice. But it's not necessarily like every class you're coming to, you're also doing asana and then talking. Like our philosophy class is a lot of theory. It's a lot of literature. It's not so much asana. We talk about asana, but that's not the focus. And then, you know, when it becomes the focus in a health sciences class for one of our labs, then we do some asana as well. I also am in a separate musculoskeletal ailments course for my yoga therapy certification, which is done through LMU and another organization. And that's a lot of practice. We practice before every session we practice, the end of every session we practice. So it's a balance, and it honestly depends on what track you decide you want to go down.
So if I understood correctly, based off your last sentence, you said what track you decide to go on. Like there's different couple of different ways to go once you start the program, right?
Yeah, so we'll get more into those details about the yoga therapy pathway versus the yoga philosophy pathway when all of our faculty join, because they're going to talk about their classes specifically, and what they bring to the program. But yeah, we'll dive definitely deeper into that.
Okay. I would say my next question would be, because I'm going to be mindful also of like other people who probably have some questions, but I just so like I heard Katie your story and Alba your story about I'm an international student as well, so I'm always also thinking about different scholarships because I'm here without like family or anything, and I don't know if on this really Zoom meeting this is something that can be discussed. But I want to know about that graduate assistant position because that is something I'm looking into. And also, Alba, question for you will probably be like, how did you find that full ride and like scholarship for the program? I mean, I've been looking at yoga studies program for now a year, and I started my application. I just always was very uncertain and hesitant when it comes to those like final details, and I'm so like grateful for the opportunity to be on this Zoom and hopefully like hear some more experiences to learn.
I can address that if you want. Is it fine? Yeah, well, so when I decided I want to do the program, in what I did was starting in Spain. So in Spain, I looked for scholarships that would cover me a master in United States. And each country, sometimes there are limited options, but often many European countries have these kind of programs. So that might be an option. And then I had to explain them why this was important, of course. So I had to it's not a design a project, but explaining how this made sense. So I told them that I put together a lot of research on yoga and told them that in Spain there was not scholarship on yoga and that there was a lot of yoga research about how yoga was being used for many medical conditions, but how yoga was being used in many different kind of fields, and all these benefits of yoga. So I had to convince them that this was important for them to give me the scholarship. So you do can, which country are you from, if I may ask?
I am from Serbia, but I am finishing my undergraduate program here in California. I am in Long Beach. But I mean, originally when I came to California, I actually wanted to come to LMU. I am an athlete my entire life. I play water polo, and I want to come to women's water polo program. But when I was coming to the States, COVID hit right then, and then they pulled all the scholarship. I always had like athletic scholarship, but right now that experience for me is like ending. So I'm looking somewhere where I can have my body still engaged, and I've been doing yoga. We have here yoga at the beach. I do yoga in our rec center. Like I love yoga. But yeah, I am from Serbia, but I don't really think that Serbia.
Yeah, my best friend is from Serbia, actually. My best friend here at LMU is from Serbia, and yeah, she made her way to the US through New York, and she did her master in New York. Anyway, I can ask her, but yeah, I think the options through Serbia are kind of limited. So maybe you can look into some programs for internationals in the US. Yeah, that's an option. And then the graduate positions, and it's something to consider, of course. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you mind if maybe I like take your email and email you eventually? Okay.
You can email me and we can even talk to this friend. I'm telling you, she's also third year PhD student from Serbia. So we kind of navigate in many of these
Awesome.
together.
That's
So
awesome. Thank you.
it's just, yeah. And then asking even through LMU, probably through the international office, maybe be in touch, ask them, navigating as many options as possible. Yeah.
Well, one thing that Alba did was she got a position as a resident advisor so that she had housing covered.
Yes. How did I forget that? Sorry, let me tell you that. This helped me a lot. So when I was in LMU, it's just so many things. Yeah, there are also jobs at LMU, like you can look for that. But for me, the resident advisor helped so much because when you're a resident advisor, the housing is covered, and housing is the most expensive in LA. So my housing was covered and also my food. So that was kind of how I could make my start, I think.
Yeah, I was like looking into that. That is something I do here as well in my school,
You're
staying
a resident
at
advisor right now, so if you have already experience at LMU, I would do that. If you apply to be a resident advisor at LMU, for me, they knew I had background in counseling, and they put me with undergrads this year, but it's fine. It was great. We managed. But if they can put you even with graduate students living in an apartment, that would be ideal, I think, because it's a lot of funds. Yeah. So just make sure if you go to LMU website housing, just check it in advance because the application they start early. And it was not hard to get that job. If you have already experience and you can show them that you're a good mentor, you might be able to get it. Yeah.
And Alba still knows the people and they love Alba.
Well, I do my best. I like mentorship. You can help a lot. Like you live on campus. Imagine if you get the job as resident advisor, you will be very busy in the program, right? We have a lot of classes, a lot of reading, but then you live on campus. So you live on campus, you don't have to commute around. And then in the own community, every week I had tea time. You can also help the younger students. Sometimes I even did yoga for them. So you can also create some of connect with other people. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
But that's
much.
definitely, I mean, if I were you, it's an option I would explore. Like, yeah, because you're at LMU, and it was also nice to work with. It's a Jesuit university, and they have this uh, spiritual framework that some of the other students who speak were talking about. So we even went into retreats, and I learned from them a lot. So it was a big part of the experience at LMU. So I would definitely look into that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nadia,
Pass here my email if you want, and I'm happy to do what I can. Yeah.
Fabulous. I'll do that. I will share Alba's email address with you. Um, before the end of the meeting, I will put my link for everyone to have access to set a one-on-one appointment with me. So if you have more questions or you want to dive deeper into some of these subjects, Nadia, we can talk about the process of applying for a graduate assistantship. Set up a meeting with me and we can dive into all of that. Just to be mindful of time, does anyone else have questions for our recent alums and our current students? Yes.
Hi, my name is, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Alyssa. I'll just echo what Nadia said and just thank all of you guys for being so candid and so detailed, and all of this information is awesome. I'm so glad I'm here. My question is, I'm currently living in New York, and I, as of now, don't really see a capacity for me to be in LA in person for the next few years. So I'm curious if any of you have done or completed the program 100% online, and if anyone can offer some insight on that.
Yeah,
Well,
so we have a lot of students who are low resident, meaning they are tuning in virtually to our program. So similar to what, kind of piggybacking off what Dr. Chappell said earlier, we've always recorded our courses for students to be able to tune in with our program now, as it stands, we have special dedicated classrooms that have cameras that are 360 degrees. And from my understanding, being a person who started virtual and who is now in person, it is a seamless transition. So people who are in the classroom feel like they're in the classroom with their classmates who are virtual, and vice versa. Those who are virtual feel like they are there in the classroom with the people who are there in person. And so the student that I mentioned to you before when we were on our conference call, they can talk to you about being virtual 100% of the time. There are some students who decide, I'm excited, I want to fly in for yoga day or for this event, this big event that's happening. And so they decide to come in addition to the foundations intensive that happens at the top of the year. But it's not obligated that people have to come after that. We really are mindful of people's time and the lives that they have. And so we don't make it an obligation to come in, but sometimes people do want to do that. So I think
yeah,
with
yeah,
this,
the 2 week experience has been
yes,
so valuable for all of us. Then the reunion that happens during the India experience. And then we're now preparing for the May reunion when people who are graduating will come for 5 days and live present again, see everyone again, as well as be there for the ceremony. And there's folks that have completed that path, and we all really feel this incredible sense of community and connection. And I know Julie is asking the same question. What you'll need to do is talk offline with Ayana about proper residencies. So, meaning states through which your address is authorized for out-of-state learning.
before the end of the session, I will put my link, my appointment scheduler, as well as my email address in the chat. So set up an appointment with me. We can talk offline about more of those details.
Yeah, and just so I don't forget, I'm happy to speak with any of you, and I'll put my address in the chat so that you can contact me if you have any questions.
Fabulous. Thank you, Dr. Chappell. Are there any other questions for our returning students and our current students? I just want to be mindful of the time. I told them I'd hold them until 5. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, thank you. Thank
Oh,
you
sorry,
so
sorry.
much. Oh, was
No,
there?
it's fine. It's fine. I was just going to add something that I do think the program is more academic, to be honest. Like, because I saw some people sometimes, because it's more academic. Of course, you have chances to practice, and most of us will practice early in the morning, or I explore some yoga studios, I explore some other places. But the classes, yeah, you read the Gita, the Upanishads, you read uh, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and all that. So I remember sometimes I was a little bit frustrated myself in class when people wanted to take it more kind of personal, but not because I don't like it, just because I thought that there are different spaces. And I was like, no, I want to read the sutras. This is more kind of, there's space for the yoga class and there is a space to learn Sanskrit, right? So I wanted to learn the Sanskrit. So yeah, I think it's about organizing kind of oneself, and those years also help me much now in PhD that it's even much more work, but I kind of organize it myself and say, no, there's time for yoga asana, now it's time for Sanskrit, now it's time for this. So it's like different kinds of yoga, different abilities.
Thank you. Thank you. That is very true. Yes. Time management, organizing your life, that embodied practice, taking what you're learning in the philosophical, spiritual realm and applying that to your personal practice, or when you're going out into the world, yoga on the mat and off the mat. It is all of these things. Thank you, Alba. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Alana, for so much for coming and sharing with us. I see all of our faculty are here, and I appreciate you. Before we dive in with faculty, if you could put just in the chat or call out, we would love for you, our interested applicants, to just kind of share a little bit about yourself, where you're living or where you're tuning in from, and then we'll dive into with our faculty.
Yeah, if each of the faculty members, I mean, not the faculty members, we'll introduce ourselves, but each of the prospective students could, as Ayana suggested, put your name, where you are, and where you went to undergraduate or graduate school, or graduate school, and maybe the name of where you went to school, so that we can all get to know each other a little bit in that way. And as we're hopefully going to be receiving that information, I want to introduce myself. You can see my name there is Chris Chappell, and I'll talk a little bit about me, and then we'll turn it over to Dr. Zoe Slatoff, Dr. Judith Carlisle, and Dr. Lori Fazio. As I mentioned earlier, I started the program. We began certificate programs at LMU in 2002. And what eventually emerged after more than 1,000 folks had been studying with us through these either 100 or as many as 400-hour certificate programs, actually 600 hours, the university suggested that we start a graduate program. So it took some years for that proposal to go through the system. And then in 2013, we began the Master of Arts in Yoga Studies. My own background is that I started yoga as a teenager, and like many of us, I'd say, yeah, yoga saved my life, or at least gave me a great life. And when I went off to university at the age of 17, first semester I started Sanskrit, second year started Tibetan, straight through all the way into graduate school with the Sanskrit language, double major in religious studies and comparative literature, MA, PhD in the history of religions in the theology department at Fordham University. And simultaneously, during those formative teenage years, I began a yoga sadhana under the guidance of a woman called Grani Anjali Inti from Calcutta. And her ashram had to travel, not to India, but from Buffalo to Long Island and in Amityville, New York. Zoe has visited there. And during that very intense 12 years, not only were we immersed in daily yoga sadhana practice, we also built many businesses. And we had an art gallery. We had a locally very prominent vegetarian restaurant. My wife and I managed a bookshop and a community education center, all the while when we were doing our undergraduate and graduate degrees and living out in our first jobs and then starting our family. In 1985, I landed here in Los Angeles and I said, I want to do some yoga stuff. And they said, I don't know about that. The priests and the nuns that were in charge. And I just said, oh, okay. And then people began to display great interest in yoga, particularly in the 1990s. And that's when we started lectures that have merged into the certificate program, that emerged into the degree program. I've published more than a couple dozen books. As Gabby mentioned earlier, she was a little bit modest, but she's proofreading two books that are in galleys right now. One, and she had a really good title for it because the press didn't like my title, so it'll probably be Embodied Ecology, the Yoga Path. And the other one is the Sankhya System. And there's a couple more books down the road that are coming up fairly quickly. And what I do within the program is right now, I am teaching the yoga philosophy text and practice, which is cross-listed as a theological studies graduate seminar in Hinduism, Vedanta, and yoga. And I, this past summer, taught the foundations course, which Judith will teach this year, but I'll be there every day. We'll do some amazing field trips. And then alternate years, I teach comparative mysticism. And there are various, I think I've taught everything except the health sciences classes at one time or another. The Sanskrit sequence, well, I've taught Buddhism for 45 years, but I've never taught it in the program. We have an amazing Buddhism professor, but virtually Hatha Yoga texts. I've done much of it. So I would like now for, let's see, who did I say next? I guess it's Dr. Slata.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Let's see. I also started practicing yoga as a teenager from a videotape originally, one of those. And I then originally studied engineering undergrad. And midway through, met Pattabhi Jois, my teacher, when he was in New York, and I did a month of practice. And at the end, he said, come to Mysore. And I quit school. And I went there for 5 months. And I always tell my undergrad students this, like, there are lots of ways to live life. And look, I went back and got a PhD. But anyway, I ended up going back to school at a few years later at Columbia. I finished my undergrad, I did a master's, and I was planning on studying something more like cognitive neuroscience, but I took a Sanskrit class with an amazing professor, Gary Tebb, and I'd already been doing a little bit on my own. My first trip to, and I kept going back and forth to Mysore for many years. I spent about 3 years there in total, over 10 years. And Pattabhi Jois was also a Sanskritist, and I would hear him quote texts, and I really wanted to know what he was saying. So I studied on my own for a few years, and then when I went back to school at Columbia, I thought, oh, amazing, I can take a Sanskrit class. But I didn't quite fit, so I took the beginner and the intermediate simultaneously, which was 3 hours of Sanskrit 3 times a week, which I just thought was amazing. And so I ended up majoring in South Asia studies and doing a master's there, thinking I was going to do a PhD, but and in a PhD program, but actually decided to take a break for various reasons and had a yoga studio in New York for 12 and a half years. And during part of that ended up doing a PhD at Lancaster in the UK as a distance program. I still mostly focused on Sanskrit. My dissertation, which I'm working on turning into a book, was on yoga and Advaita Vedanta. And I've been here. This is my third year teaching in the program. The first year I taught just Sanskrit online from New York, never thinking in a million years that I would move to LA. But here I am, and it turns out I like it here. It's really hard to argue with LA weather. And so I teach the Sanskrit first year and second year. And I actually met Dr. Chappell quite a few years earlier when my Sanskrit textbook was published, Yogavataranam, which is the book I teach from in the program. And he wrote me a lovely blurb, and we had a lovely meeting. And so it seemed sort of like, divine intervention that I ended up out here teaching in this program from my book. And I also I've taught yoga philosophy. Dr. Fazio and I are co-teaching the Hatha text class this semester. We're also co-teaching the thesis class. I also teach an undergraduate Buddhism course. And yes, also can wear various hats in that field. And just to add one more thing on the Sanskrit, people are often intimidated or scared by the idea of Sanskrit, but I am here to make it fun and fun and friendly, and to help you through it. I will never say that it's easy, but I can say that it's fun and that you will hopefully fall in love with it. And yes, last thing, that all of us in this program are scholars and practitioners, and we bring that together, which I think is a really special and unique thing. Though, as Alba was saying, we are here to be scholars. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Sladoff. We are definitely lucky to have you here. I think one thing that, we really like to focus on, something that Alba said earlier, is that foundation in Sanskrit, that language foundation really supports your study as you're diving deeper into these texts. And so we really appreciate Dr. Sladoff for guiding us in that. Dr. Carlisle, I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us more about the courses that you teach with us.
Hi, I'm Judith Carlisle, and I'm coming from Annapolis, Maryland, where I live. I came back here to restore an old beach cottage. And I like to tell people that my very first memory is me doing yoga with my grandmother in Alexandria, Virginia. And I recently found in that beach cottage, going through packing up, an old Richard Hittleman Yoga and Health book, which was a little like, there are these very long books with the postures, and that's a book that my grandmother would use and that I would practice yoga with my grandmother with. So that was very thrilling and exciting to find that. I have let's see, my degrees. I have a bachelor's degree in English literature from Occidental College in Los Angeles. And I think that Occidental competes with LMU to determine which campus which is the most beautiful campus. And they're both quite nice. I then went to Tucson, Arizona, where I did a master's and PhD in management information systems, where I did more than 20-year career teaching various institutions. Semi-retired, went to LMU, where I did the master's degree in yoga studies. So I have a relationship with the professors, with Dr. Chappell and Dr. Fazio, where they're both my teachers, and now they are my colleagues, and I can't say how thrilling and gratifying that is. While I was in the master's program, I had the opportunity to start teaching one of the certificate classes in yoga, mindfulness, and social change. Social justice has been a lifetime passion of mine. I was able to take that class over when it was one of the extension classes, actually in the Center for Religion and Spirituality, and focus it into a class that worked hard to explore the alignment of yoga with social justice practices and pursuits on in a worldly manner. And then came into the MA program, teaching the class Modern Yoga, Mindfulness, and Social Change, which combines both the history of yoga, of the contemporary practice, with the pursuit of social justice, with yoga, mindfulness, and social change. So in that class, I would say that the biggest learning outcome is looking at how we can look at yoga not only as a practice of spiritual transcendence, but also a practice of to motivate and to embody the pursuit of worldly justice. So we start with a history of yoga coming from medieval times, medieval India, right smack, bringing it up to the arrival of Vivekananda in the United States. We look at the emergence of various traditions. Then we also, after that, we come right up to the present time, where we look at some difficult topics, such as gurus behaving badly. We look at the troubling alignment of yoga with white supremacy, with fascism, and then even the current kind of appropriation of yoga into conspiracy theories. And then we also take a look at multiple topics within yoga as it aligns with justice practices and pursuits. And ultimately striving to find a way to look at how yoga has motivated and supported some of the modern pursuits of justice. Of course, Gandhi's Satyagraha, Martin Luther King Jr.'s use of yoga as to train his direct action participants, and then look at how yoga also works internationally to also help people pursue social justice around the world. So that's what I got for that class. And we also want to bring into the modern yoga. We look at some pretty classic texts of modern yoga, starting with Singleton's Yoga Body. And I'm really looking forward to the next time we teach it, bringing in some of Jason Birch's really very, very recent groundbreaking research on the emergence of the postures. So that's a very exciting class to be able to teach.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judith. It's an exciting class to be in too. LMU has a history of really being connected to social justice. And so I think that's one of the reasons why this class fits so nicely into this program, because we're not just about posturing and kind of talking about all of this in theory. It really is about practice and embodied practice and how we move this yoga, capital Y, into the world, ethically into the world. So thank you so much for sharing about yourself and about the class, Judith. Dr. Fazio, please, it is your stage.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I am coming to you live just a bit south from where Dr. Carlisle is. I recently moved, as in about 5 weeks ago, to the Southeast. So I'm in Florida so that I can be doing some elder care for my mother. So my husband and I relocated here to help out with that, and very grateful to have the opportunity to support her in that way. And so exploring a whole new world here. And let's see, so I have been teaching in the master's program since 2014. And prior to that, I taught the yoga therapy courses in the extension, the certificate program since 2008. And I teach the health science or yoga therapy courses. I prefer to call them health science courses than yoga therapy, because therapy infers that something's broken and you're going to fix it. And while we do look at how yoga can support people with their ailments, really what we're looking at in this program is the transformational quality of yoga and how that can be therapeutic on an individual basis or a small group. So a little bit about my background. I'm actually from upstate New York, not too far from where Dr. Chappell is. And I grew up there, and then I went to Boston University for my undergrad in physical therapy. And then I moved out here to California. And then I went to Australia, to University of South Australia, where I got an advanced degree in manipulative therapy, and it's a specialty in physiotherapy, and studied a lot of pain science there. And why that's really relevant is the pain science study was about neuroplasticity, which you may have heard of. And I had been practicing yoga since the early 90s and been following about how meditation particularly had some changes in the brain, neuroplastic changes in the brain. And it was the exact opposite to what we were studying in pain science that I was studying in Australia. And so I started thinking, well, everybody who has this problem needs to be practicing yoga, particularly meditation. So they kind of merged together way back then. And then I eventually did my doctorate at Mass General in Cambridge. It's kind of associated with Harvard Medical School there. And so let's see, my yoga background, I started practicing in the early 90s. I was a very spiritual child. For me, yoga was hoping to answer some of the questions about experiences I had as a kid. And so I went into my first class. I saw something on a telephone pole, a little, flyer posted up there, and it had little white things you could pull off if you want to attend. And this was before yoga had its resurgence in the 90s. So I had to climb up these stairs to this little room. Everybody was dressed in white. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody spoke other than chanting things that I didn't know what they were. Nobody gave any instruction. I tried to follow along. I didn't know how to stand on my head. I didn't know what they were doing with their nose. I didn't know why we were blowing our nose. Did all kinds of things there. And I left thinking, yeah, that did not answer anything for me. So I went in 93, I traveled to Asia. My teacher had said, if you really need to go to India, because all the teachers that I had in that resurgence of yoga in the 90s, they had all studied in yoga, similar to Dr. Slatov with Pattabhi Jois, with Iyengar, Krishnamacharya, Desikachar. So I set out with my best friend to go travel around Asia and had a life-changing experience happen in Thailand. So I never made it to India, but I did learn a lot about life and spirituality in that experience. And it was yoga that really got me through that experience. And I came back, and in 2000, I did my first teacher training with Matthew Taylor. And then in 2007, Larry Payne took me aside and did one-on-one training with me, so that similar to how he said he was taught with Desikachar. And then after several years, he said, I'm a questioner. I ask a lot of questions. And he said, my cup is empty, and I think you should go study with Swami Veda of the Himalayan tradition. So I went and studied with Swami Veda in the Himalayan tradition, and I really liked that approach, but I wasn't really ready to initiate into that at that time. I did several years later. And then a few years later, I found this man named Dr. Ananda Bhavanani, and I started to write to him, and he had lots of answers to a lot of my questions. And I really resonated with him because he's a medical doctor, but he also had grown up in yoga tradition, Guru Parampara in southern India. And Larry knew him and said, yeah, this is the guy for you. So I have been studying with him ever since. And thanks to COVID, once COVID hit, he took the ashram online, and I have been in his classes weekly since the beginning of COVID and studying with him. And so that's a little bit about that background. So in the program here, let's see. Everybody, I teach the health, well, I have been teaching the health science in one course up in, I'm not sure if I will this next year, but that class everybody takes the first semester. And in that class, what we do is we look at the body from all the different modern medical concepts of cardiovascular, pulmonary, digestive, etc. We also look at the body through the yogic lens of the body. So subtle body, chakras, nadis, even the gross body of the doshas. So lots and lots of different perspectives that we can really understand what is this earth suit that we inhabit from these different perspectives. And woven through all of the modern medical science is the yogic science. And then as Dr. Slotov said, I co-teach the Hatha Yoga class. And then there are the yoga therapy courses. And there's two ways that you can do this. One is we call it the postgraduate certificate in yoga therapy. You can do the whole MA program and then do another year of 3 more courses, 3 more 3-credit courses, as well as a trip to India. And then you would qualify for another certificate called the postgraduate certificate in yoga therapy. Or you can take those same classes as part of the MA. So you would substitute out 2 classes and then take 1 additional 3-credit course. So the courses are the same. That's why I'm telling you, you can do it in 2 different ways, depending on how much time or resources you have for your studies. And so a little bit about those courses. There's health science and yoga too. This is probably my most exciting class to have put together. I really, really enjoyed this class. What we do is the premise is learning the effects that various yogic practices have on us. So be it mudra, mantra, asana, various asana pranayamas. But to do that, you create an evidence-based yoga program for a population. And you learn how to write an evidence-based program so that you could use this to go out and do your dharma in the world, if that's what you would like to do. And so some of the examples that we have, one student who'll be presenting this year created a program for survivors of domestic violence. And she brought it to a nonprofit where she had taught yoga classes and said, well, I have this yoga therapy approach. And they implemented it. She did a small little research study, and it was so successful that this nonprofit once started to create a teacher training and put it in every city where they have this nonprofit. It was really successful. There's another student who created a program for Mandarin-speaking Chinese immigrants, then really integrating from the comparative mysticism, understanding their Buddhist philosophy of their Buddhist perspective on life and integrating that. And there's one who created for menopause, and she's actually in Israel, and they're implementing it into their national healthcare system. And she brought it to the Arab women. So now they're bringing the Arab and Israeli women together to unite through their menopause. So kind of working on that type of bringing people together for peace. And there's one who's working, Ayana actually can tell you about her. She's working the mortality rate for African-American birthing people is outrageous and continues to be outrageously high. So she's has created in that program, and that course, a program for mothers or birthing people of African-Americans to help support them through yoga and looking at some of the systemic issues that contribute to that high mortality rate. So it's really, there's lots of options for doing that. And then the applications course, you learn about the individual, how you work with an individual, how you evaluate them. We do things such as motivational interviewing and looking at some skaras and vasanas and kind of our habits, the way we show up in life and how that contributes to our suffering. So if you're interested in yoga therapy, there's something that we kind of subcategorize as yogopathy, kind of like allopathy or osteopathy. And that's where you are, what are the practices for the problem? And then there's also the yoga therapy that we're talking about, which is getting to the root cause, which is usually stress or perspective in life. where we're creating our own suffering based on the way we show up in life. And so that's really the emphasis of this particular program. And then there's a practicum class where you will work, either implement your evidence-based program that you created, and you can do a small IRB study, which is a small institution. You get ethics approval from the university and do a small research study, or you can work with individual people, individual cases. And you get private mentor, and we also work together as a group to really implement the skill set and through applied philosophy of yoga. And then you create a poster. So if you've ever been to an academic conference, one of the ways that people present are posters. And so this gives you a little flavor of learning how to create a poster for that. So I'm a big fan of giving you tools to help you get out in the world for what you're doing after you're in the program. So that's those are the courses, and the last thing is the India class, or the India course. So every other year we take a 2-week yoga therapy trip to India, and we start in Chennai, and then we go to Pondicherry or Puducherry, which is where Dr. Nanda is, and the Mahatma Gandhi Medical Center. All the patients who get admitted can get yoga therapy and music therapy, and so we study and learn what they're doing there. They have yoga therapy for all kinds of different groups there, and so we study there. We also do some sightseeing, and then we fly across the country to the Western Ghats, just a few hours east of Mumbai, to Kaivalya Dham, which is the very first yoga research center in the world. And we stay at the ashram there, and we study with their expert faculty. And we also go to their library, which is, I believe, is it the largest Sanskrit library of texts? I think if one of them, they have a lot of texts that some of them, maybe not the largest, but they have a lot of texts, many of which are yet to be translated. So we visit with their philosophy department. And then if anybody's interested in becoming an IAYT certified yoga therapist, so International Association of Yoga Therapy, there are 2.5 additional courses that you would be taking that are with our partners. So there are, one is a musculoskeletal ailments course, another is a mental health and special populations. And then you have additional practicum hours that you do. And then you could qualify for IAYT certification. I will pop my email in the chat. If you are interested in anything having to do with health science and yoga or yoga therapy, reach out and we can chat, and I'd be happy to connect. So thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Fazio. Yes, that Health Science 2 course and learning through that lens was very helpful in really kind of formulating and honing in on what it is that I wanted to bring into the world. And so I really appreciate that time in the class to be able to do that and do that with your guidance. That was brilliant. So thank you, thank you. Dr. Chappell, I will kick it back to you for talking more about our timing and everything, and how we move through the program. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you so much. It's so good to hear from everybody. And I know a couple of people had to leave already, but I'm more than happy to just give a really quick summary overview, restate some of the work that our graduates are doing. We have more than 100 people out there in the big world now, and open it up quickly for questions. I want to thank you also for sharing your background in the Zoom, and I hope it didn't distract you too much from whatever it was that was being said. But it's so gratifying to learn the richness of the story behind the lives of our many, many applicants. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we convene for 2 weeks in July, and Judith and I will be guiding you through a course, and Zoe and Lori, through a course in Foundations of Yoga Studies. We'll be reading together the book Tracing the Path of Yoga that gives an historical, philosophical, sociological background to the yoga tradition, multivalent. And we'll be doing field trips to historic yoga sites. I see a couple of you are in the Shivananda tradition. We'll spend some time at the Shivananda Center here in LA, which is spectacular. We'll spend some time at the Vedanta Society, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary. We'll spend time at the Self-Realization Fellowship Shrine, founded by Paramahansa Yogananda, again, more than 100 years ago. We'll do a road trip out to Ojai. We'll visit the home of Dr. Krishnamurti, who wrote so many, many books, as well as visit the Theosophical Society, Meditation Mount, and Ojai is just such a magical place. And during that period, you'll begin to learn the Sanskrit alphabet a little bit. You'll most likely, Judith will guide you most likely through a short first paper, and then we'll be completing a longer paper, checking in with you over the next couple of months. I mean, that's what seemed to have worked well for us. And then in the fall semester, you'll do Sanskrit twice a week with Dr. Sletov. And then you'll do Health Sciences 1 with perhaps Dr. Makajani, or we'll see. We'll see that we're still hiring in that position. And then the next semester, depending upon the track that you choose, you will definitely continue your Sanskrit, most likely take the philosophy class, and then perhaps the Hatha Yoga class. Then the first summer session, Buddhism is an option. Second summer session, Jainism is an option. Then the following fall, you'll take Sanskrit 3, and then a choice of Health Sciences 2, perhaps, or comparative mysticism, perhaps, or history of modern yoga and social change and mindfulness, perhaps, many different options and pathways. And then the next semester, the Hatha Yoga class combined perhaps with something, and then coming full circle, eventually you'll write a final project. Now, these final projects, I encourage you to view. They're on our YouTube channel, and they encapsulate the diversity of interests pursued by the students. Some of them go into a deep dive with the Sanskrit text. Some of them, as Dr. Fazio already indicated, will develop a study that relates to the therapeutic aspects of yoga. And what we encourage, and it's not hard, is for people to follow their own bliss. And from day one, we'll say, yeah, that may be something you will want to think about for your final project. And we really prepare you for this. And some people, in fact, write a fuller version of a paper from an earlier course for their final project. We have graduates that are now in tenure track positions teaching yoga, community colleges. We have several graduates that are teaching yoga full time at other universities, including University of Southern California. We have several graduates that are completing PhDs at various places around the country, including the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, the California Institute for Integral Studies, the University of Florida, Syracuse University, University of Chicago. The list is long and robust. You heard earlier, University of California at Riverside. And we, throughout this experience, also supplement with a 2 or 3 times a semester, a Wednesday evening lecture. You're all invited tomorrow night online with Dr. Nancy Martin talking about Mirabai, the great woman saint of India. We do Yoga Day. This year, it's been funded by the Lens Foundation with supplemental funding. And what we are doing is Judith and Ayana are preparing a series of podcasts that highlight and foreground the voices, the literal voices of women leaders within yoga and meditation. Then these people will be live on campus for a robust conversation combined with yoga experience. And at the same time, Dr. Ananda Rao will be with us from India. So that's another opportunity if you're out of state and you want to fly in, or you're out of country, want to fly in for a few days. That's another really robust time to visit. And many of our remote learners will do that. We have a solid relationship with Inside LA, which is the Southern California wing of the Spirit Rock Meditation Center up in Northern California and the International Meditation Society of Massachusetts, founded by Jack Cornfield and Trudy Goodman and Sharon Salzberg and others. And we do work 2 or 3 times a semester, day-long retreat. We just were there on Sunday, and we started with yoga, a little bit of breakfast, a silent walk, a group meditation, and then we do ecological restoration. It's 47 acres in the Santa Monica Mountains, Beverly Hills Post Office. It's spectacular, and again, it really builds a sense of togetherness. And as you heard, the faculty busy with lots of things, and we always welcome and encourage students to get involved. So, Ayana?
Yes, thank you so much for sharing all of that, Dr. Chappell. We will take a moment to open it up to questions. If you have questions, please raise your hand, unmute, and we will take your questions, and then I will share a little bit more information before we close out. Any questions? It's okay. Sometimes you have to think about it, kind of absorb the information. The questions will come later. I have shared some links in our chat. You'll see that the BCLA Yoga Studies YouTube page, I've shared a link so you can see past discussions, past thesis presentations. If you're available in May 1st and May 2nd, we will have our colloquium for this year. And so we can invite you to that. You can tune in virtually, or if you're local, you can come in person. And then I put the link to register for our Wednesday night lecture that's coming up tomorrow. You'll also see my information, a link to the one-on-one appointment scheduler, as well as my email. And so we can dive into further questions that you may have as they come up there as well. The last thing I want to share is the biggest question that most people have, and that is about funding. How do you finance your education moving into this Master's of Yoga Studies? And so here I'm sharing my screen to show you our Yoga Studies website. And down at the bottom under how to apply, we have number 1, the drop down for application requirements when you are ready to put your application in, all the details that you'll need for that. And then we also have information about scholarships. So there's a drop down, there's a link to a 1-sheet application that you would need to fill out, as well as a 1-page letter. The letter is really just an extension of what you are saying in your letter of intent for your application, and it tells us why you are need-based and what you plan to do moving forward through the master's program and with your education. It also has links to all the FAFSA paperwork. If you have more detailed questions about financial aid and the FAFSA process, we encourage you to talk to the folks in LMU's financial aid department. They'll be able to give you more details about that process, but we can share information about the scholarships that we have available to students, and then also graduate assistantships that are available. If you are interested in applying to any of the positions that we have open, you would send me an email and we would schedule time to discuss the open positions and setting up an interview for you in that regard. As you are thinking about the cost for your education, the yoga studies program, master's program on the philosophy track, it does require you to have 36 semester units completed. And then if you were thinking about you want to do the extension, or excuse me, the yoga therapy or the postgraduate certificate, that would be a few extra units. And so for the concentration in yoga therapy, it would be 39 semester units. So keep these numbers in mind as we move to the next page. This is the LMU's page that shows updated numbers for graduate tuition and fees. And so this page shows this current year. I'm going to scroll down to the Bellarmine College of Liberal Arts. That is the college that the Yoga Studies program is housed under. And you'll see that the program is broken down. They use the unit cost as they're talking about the fees for education. And so for the Bellarmine College of Liberal Arts, each unit is $1,458. And so you would then use this number to multiply by the semester units, the full 36 semester units that are needed for the philosophy track, or the 39 semester units for the concentration, to figure out what the baseline for your education is going to be. I'll stop sharing from there. The thing to remember is you're breaking this cost up across 3 years. And so many of you will take up on average 2 classes per semester. So that's about 6 units per semester that you're looking at. With us being a master's program, you have the ability to put your FAFSA applications in and get loans to supplement your education. There are a number of other scholarships that are available to students. We have the Office of National and International Fellowships. They send out a bi-weekly newsletter that says these are the upcoming dates for scholarships that are available. Most of those are geared towards undergraduates, but there are some good, really big gems for graduate students as well. I'm always on the hunt and look out for opportunities for graduate students and scholarships. But it does take some time on your part as a student to kind of look and source those scholarship opportunities for yourself. And if there's a way for us to support you with those applications, we will do that. The other thing to remember when you're thinking about LMU and the cost of the education is all the services that LMU has for you. So as a student, you have the opportunity for healthcare. You have access to the Office of Career and Professional Development. You might think, gosh, I'm already in my career, but sitting down with those career professionals, revamping your resume as time goes on really can be beneficial as you're crafting your brand and as you're crafting your message and how you want to move with yoga in the world. We also have a very extensive library with your with being a part of the LMU community. You have access to peer-reviewed journals that you might not get access to outside of the university. So when you're thinking about research and doing the projects in school and then some of your papers outside of, you really do have access through our library to unique materials. And so these are all the things that that we have access to, and that goes into that investment into your education. So being mindful of time, we have about 10 more minutes. If any questions have come up for you in this time, we can open the floor up again for those questions. If not, I encourage you to attend the financial aid workshop that's directly following us. Also the Career and Professional Development Office. And then if you're an international student, listening to the International Student Panel. No questions? Fabulous. Okay. I am available. Please, please, please send me an email. set an appointment with me. Thank you so much to our faculty for joining and sharing with us today. We look forward to speaking with you and really connecting with you further outside of this.
Thanks,
Please.
Aliska.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. It was fascinating to hear all of this.
Great.
Thank
And where
you.
are you
I'll-
in New York? Where are you in New York?